For more than 60 days now, strife and violence have swept through the northeastern state of Manipur, with law and order breaking down and with trust in all institutions except one breaking down. It is time to ask one question. Is the army the last glue that is holding the center, as it were, of this strife-torn state together? I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. As you know, we have been on the ground in Manipur. We have continued special analysis and interviews. We had the first Lieutenant General from all of the Northeast on this platform saying it is time to bring in the special forces. But at the same time, with the meitei and the kuki community completely polarized, units of administration have been similarly divided. Legislators' homes have been torched, the homes of ministers have been torched. There are 4,000 weapons in circulation, many of them high caliber. In this moment, it is the army that is actually holding the peace, literally holding it in a very, I would say, unsung way. I think we haven't stopped to acknowledge that while trust in all institutions has broken down, it is the army today that continues to be seen as non-partisan. And because of this, many of the outreach talks that are taking place with civil society members and indeed with leadership of both communities are actually taking place through the army. We look at today on the program the unsung role of the army, but also ask what might lie ahead. After all, the army can't step into the shoes of where politician and civil administration should be. But when you're looking also at a national security question, when you're looking at a live border situation with Myanmar, how much can the army do? And are we stopping to appreciate what the army has already done? Let me introduce our guests on the program today. Joining us are two military veterans. First, let me welcome to the program General D.S. Hooda, who's of course been former Northern Army commander. Always good to see you, sir. And also joining us is General Sanjay Kulkarni, who of course among many roles has been Director General of Infantry. Welcome both of you. Let me start with you, General Hooda. This is an unprecedented situation we're seeing, and I think a lot of people don't even now understand how dire it is. If you look at the numbers, you see that by the end of May itself, there were 164 army columns in deployment. More than 35,000 Manipuris have actually been helped by the army. These are civilians who have been displaced. But you're looking at a very serious situation where you're talking about high caliber weapons in circulation. And because of that, you have the local police enfeebled, and it has fallen on the army and the Assam Rifles to really step in where all other institutions are literally collapsing. How do you see what's happening on the ground in Manipur? General Hooda, let me start with you.
Thank you for inviting me to your show. And apart from the Northern Army commander, let me also tell you that I commanded my division in Manipur in the period 2009-10. I was there as the GOC at Limakong. So I do know what the ground situation is. What we are seeing today, Barkha, is extremely serious. I think the fundamental issues you have already sort of pointed out, that there is a complete breakdown of trust between the Meitei and the Kuki communities. Both sides are now heavily armed. You have the involvement of militant underground groups. I mean, that's established. There is a porous border across which, militants which are based in Myanmar, there are reports that they have sort of moved in. And here you have this massive involvement of civil population. We've had cases of Meitei, for example, stopping army patrols from functioning. So I think the way the army is operating is absolutely commendable. You mentioned 164 odd columns. I think more than 100 were flown in within 48 hours. And they have been deployed. And the challenges that they're facing are absolutely enormous. But I think the good thing is that there is a great deal of trust and confidence. A lot of the talks that are taking place between different communities actually take place in army camps. I know my unit is deployed there, and I keep talking to them and behaving in an absolutely sort of professional manner. So I think hats off to what's happening and how the army is sort of dealing with the situation. The only thing, Barkha, is that while yes, they over a period of time will be able to control the levels of violence, I think the more sort of basic questions of how to deal with this, the people in Manipur, how to deal with their demands, their requirements, their aspirations. Those are things that will have to be politically addressed. Barkha.
Before I come to the politics, let me actually ask you to talk a little bit about what it means for local army units when they come face to face with protesting women. There's been a lot of discussion on this, right? And if we can, in fact, show you those images, the army actually released a video saying to be humane should not be considered a sign of weakness. And basically what happened was that the army was compelled to release 12 militants to maintain the larger peace. And this is the video that was subsequently released. And I was talking to General Konsam Himalaya, who's of course the first Lieutenant General from the Northeast, and he said, it's okay, let the militants go, we'll catch them later. What's more important is to ensure that no civilian life is lost. You don't make the situation more inflammatory. Now, this is very difficult, almost counterintuitive for people to understand. So I want you to talk a little bit, General Hooda, also with your vast experience of these situations in Kashmir. And of course, General KH has also served in Kashmir. So, he's also speaking from that experience. What does the army do? You have women on the streets of Manipur from both sides leading the street sort of campaigns. What does the army do in such a situation?
So, Barkha, I completely agree with KH Singh, and that's the thing we also followed in Kashmir, is that where you're facing large crowds, particularly children and women, you have to be extremely, extremely cautious. Let me just, the 2016 incidents in Kashmir and what goes through young officers' minds. So I had got the young officers together at Victor Force in Avantipur, telling them that, listen, this is a very challenging situation and you have to deal with it. And one officer got up, young officer, and he said, sir, we were surrounded, we were sitting in our Casper vehicle, we were surrounded by women. They started banging at us on the walls of the Casper vehicle. They were abusing us. And he says, I was sitting inside and feeling so frustrated. That's the kind of sense that the young officers have. And that's the kind of challenges that they face. But he also said, if I came out, then I knew there would be, 1 or 2 deaths and fighting, etc. Really, you have to feel for these young officers and these soldiers, and how they sort of keep a control on themselves, how they don't let their frustrations and anger boil over. It's an immense challenge, but it's only when you actually operate it on ground that you actually see it playing out.
Yeah. General Kulkarni, one thing that I think a lot of people don't appreciate is that the army is right now operating without the earlier cover of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, or the AFSPA. Now, the AFSPA is a highly sort of, much debated sort of legal cover for the army in conflict zones. And without getting into that debate, I think we need to explain what that means, for soldiers, how nervous they might be taking decisions that could later come back to haunt them. General Kulkarni, your thoughts?
Thank you, Barkha. You've heard General Hooda, and we all know exactly this is the kind of situation, the challenges that the officers and men face on the ground. Now, at this point of time, whether the Armed Forces Special Power Act is there or not there, when women are around you, you have to be absolutely careful, cautious, and very, very, a situation where humanitarian angle is going to be taken into consideration. You have to understand the aspirations of these people. Find women in all kinds of situations, in all kinds, some dressed, undressed, all kinds of things that are happening there. And that speaks that the kind of frustration that is there. And that is where, under these circumstances, you have the army, the Assam Rifles. Assam Rifles, incidentally, has been functioning in Manipur since 1915. So they really know everybody. And most of these Assam Rifle units have Kukis, Meiteis, Nagas, the 3 dominant groups that are there in Manipur, also forming part of Assam Rifles. There are other columns. Even within the army, we have all of them with us. So there is nothing. Everybody understands. But a situation like this, where the men, and especially the officers, young officers, have to be told that, look, this is the situation. Why has it reached to this level where you find women protesting? It has happened earlier also. And it may, where the women take charge, and it has been historically in Manipur. It's known right from British times. We know how women take charge of all these kind of situations, and they come forward to prevent people from just saying the recent incident where they said that where the army had surrounded, they knew where the militants were, and they still were allowed to go because the women protested and ensured that the army couldn't reach them at all. Now, this situation is an extremely difficult situation, but has to be tackled. For this, each one of us has to really know who are cookies, who are meiteis, who are nagas, what's the real problem that's going on between them, why is it they're so sensitive, why is the situation so challenging, why is there so much of contradiction. Sometimes you find the meiteis, you seem to be on the right, sometimes you find the cookies could be saying something which appeals to you, sometimes that the nagas are saying. What is the composition of people over there? Since when has this composition taken place? Why are the meiteis feel so strongly? What are the other factors that are there? We all are at More. We know what is Chorachandpur district. Where does the smuggling come from? What is this drug angle to it? What are these illegal immigrants? What we call them as illegal immigrants, they call it the Raitian, the brothers, and they are not willing to call them refugees. How come the various religious institutions are being used to feed them, to look after them? So all of this has to be understood by everybody who is there operating. Once they understand that, yes, this is the reason for which this sort of a situation has happened, who are even politically, the civil administration over there, the local police over there, all kinds of militant groups that are functioning. We call the Zomi Revolutionary Army, the Kuki, the fronts, all kinds of organizations, armed, unarmed, drug mafia, gangsters, a whole lot of things that are happening there. And when it comes to drugs, there are, of course, no meiteis, no cookies, no nagas. They are all drug peddlers doing it. Business that are there. Everybody understands 50,000 crore drug business that are there every year, where 35,000 crore is just the state budget. So you know the kind of people who are operating there. You know the development that is there. So therefore, the people who are operating there, especially the security forces that are operating there, have to be sensitized to the aspirations of the people, what it means, what is a forest area, why aren't they going there, what is poppy cultivation going on there, what are the synthetic drugs that are going, all these kind, so many things that everybody needs to be sensitized. And on top of it, you find these women in front of you not letting you work for reasons that are best known to them, because obviously each one of them are so sort of feeling that their community needs to be protected. Under these circumstances, are our troops operating? And like what General Hooda said, they do feel frustrating that, well, they know exactly what's going on, they understand what it is, but then the human angle comes that no firing to ensure. And therefore, whether the Armed Forces Special Power Act is there or not there, the president's rule is there or not there, you remove anybody or not. After all, the operations have to be conducted by the people and the security forces on ground who will ensure, until and unless all these civilians are locked up in their houses. That's the only way things can come to light. And the elders, very important, the Gaon Buddhas we refer to, those Gaon Buddhas have to be interacted. The communication has to take place. No unilateral actions or decisions can take place, because these are all tribal minds. You can have constitution, you can have everything, but tribal mind works little differently. So if you call a Gaon Buddha, you interact with him, you tell him, look, this is my problem. What is your problem? Now, what is the solution? He'll give you midway solution. You work out. You say, okay.
But General Kulkarni, the army is conducting talks with the community leaders, with the elders of the village. All of this is not the job of the army, right? And I think people don't fully appreciate that this is also what the army is having to do. And while the army is in a situation where it is dealing with communities that have up to 4,000 weapons, there are reports of drones, IEDs, and other sort of rocket launchers among these weapons. You also have a live border. You have a border situation with Myanmar. You have battalions posted there who cannot be diverted, right? It's not an ideal situation, and I think it's an underappreciated role that the army is playing. General Kulkarni.
See, much that it may not be appreciated, but there's something that we all are doing. We understand that almost about 1,600 kilometers of border with the northeast, with Manipur, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, with Manipur itself, about 400 odd kilometers of border with them. We have the Indo-Myanmar border, which is taking place, ensuring that there's no smuggling taking place. What's happened in Myanmar in 2021, the repercussions of what's happening over there, the same kind of ethnicity existing between Mizoram, Manipur, and Myanmar, the kind of interaction that took place between these communities way back in 60s and 70s, what's happening today, why this illegal. So there is a lot. And of course, as I said, Army Assam Rifles, very excellent, very professional arm, which is there operating since 1915, which has uh, people from all communities there enrolled in Assam Rifles. They all understand. But there is something which we have to do, because like even you mentioned, Jalhuda mentioned, total trust is in the army. The army, the Assam Rifles is trusted. Sometimes you might feel, the rumor mongering, kind of word propaganda. No, 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 no. These people are biased towards one community or biased towards another community. All this kind of false propaganda will be done. And today, when there's so much of drug money, unbelievable drug money which is flowing, obviously these drug lords are there to influence, to spread propaganda, to trigger thing. Small issues can become big issues. And like I was just discussing with General Hooda before we started the program, I was there in Manipur. I was there on the 10th and the 11th of April in Manipur. I saw that Femina Miss India contest being conducted in the stadium over there, the kind of response that was there. I was part of the G21, later being conducted over there. So I met the chief minister there at that point of time, saw the kind of development that has taken place. Unbelievable. I myself was quite surprised. The medical colleges coming up over there, the engineering institutes which are coming up over there, a Japanese museum which has come up over there, their contribution during the Second World War at Imphal. Everything was looking hunky-dory and everything looked perfect. And even to say that this High Court order it wasn't actually so. The reserve forest, the need for forest, the poppy culture. So a lot that was going on. There was so much happening. It was like a pressure cooker. Probably not many people knew what was happening internally. And then everybody was seeing, all the good things that are being seen on ground. But a lot that was happening. There was, for years, this kind of, to say that the Kukis and the Meiteis and the Nagas have always been seeing eye to eye. No, they're all, again, I feel, Barkha, one thing which I don't somehow subscribe to it is calling the Meiteis the non-tribal. To me, when I go from here, everybody appears to me tribal. Now, obviously, if there's a hill state, there's bound to be some areas which are valleys. And just that the valleys alone will be given to the Meiteis, and the hills, which constitute a larger part of the 22,000 square kilometers of an area of a state of Manipur. You have about 21,000 square kilometers of an area of Mizoram. Now, Mizoram also have about 1.3 million people who are inclined towards Kukis and the same ethnicity as the Zo. You have Mizo and Mizoram. Ram does not mean the Maryada Purushottam Ram. It means the land of the Mizos. That's why the word Mizoram is there. The same ethnicity extending to Chittagong Hill in Bangladesh. The same similar thing in Myanmar, in the Chin district. So there are huge, connectivity issues, and all speak the same language. The Naga tribes don't speak the same language, but the Kukis, irrespective whether they're in Myanmar, they're in Bangladesh, they're in Mizoram, or they're in Manipur, the language is the same.
Let me bring in General Hooda without actually getting into the debate over whether the Meiteis should have tribal recognition or not, though General Kulkarni makes that point and the High Court made that point, and then we are in this situation. The Supreme Court, of course, is as we speak asking for an updated status report on the situation. But General Hooda, two things to you. One is, do you feel the army has been an unsung protagonist, an unsung first responder of Manipur? Do you feel that there's no understanding outside of the state from anybody of what the army is having to go through today?
Absolutely, Barkha. Before that, let me just come back to your question about AFSPA. And Jan Kulkarni said whether it's there or not there, we are going to operate, and that's true. The problem is the absence of AFSPA complicates the employment of the army in the manner that every time army columns have to move out, they have to be accompanied by a magistrate. Which means that if you have to immediately sort of react, you are limited in doing that because you have to wait for a magistrate to come and then operate under aid to civil authority. While in AFSPA, you can actually say they will move out and do your job.
Why is the magistrate needed in
So
responding to,
this
let's say, strife?
this is Barkha. Unfortunately, this is part of the CRPC, Aid to Civil Authority Act, that the army, if it is called out in aid to civil authority, it has to be the columns. Each column has to be accompanied by a magistrate. So I'm saying under AFSPA, you have the authority to move out and operate
Yeah,
on your own.
yeah,
It's like Delhi. Areas which are not under AFSPA are like Delhi. So the army cannot on its own move out in Delhi and control riots. It has to be called. And if it has to be called, the magistrate has to be there. So this is one sort of complication. On your question of the army being unsung heroes, just see what all they're doing. They've set up relief. It's not only that they are in aid to civil authorities. They've set up relief camps. They've set up medical camps. They've organized blood donation camps. They are talking and trying to mediate between different communities, and that's because they have the maximum level of trust amongst all the communities. You also mentioned that at the same time you have to make sure that the border is secure. You have to make sure that underground groups do not become or take shelter of this to become strong. So enormous amount of effort is going in by troops on the ground, thousands of them who are there 24/7. And sometimes you feel bad when you see some posts on social media saying the army or the Assam Rifle is favoring this community or favoring
yeah.
that community, or you find civilians coming out and blocking soldiers from carrying out operations. Ultimately, if the army is not going to move out, people are going to lose their lives, and just locals are going to lose their lives. And so I think that's something that the local communities must also understand. Look, the Mira Paibis have done outstanding work in the past in making sure that the communities are free from drugs and alcohol, etc. But I think this kind of action in stopping armies, I think is completely wrong.
Yeah. And in fact, General Kulkarni, we had a very unprecedented, strong statement from the army, when this suggestion was made that the army is, taking the side of one community against the other. And you had a very, very stern sort of statement about the uniform and the honor of the army being above all of these divisions, and for a commanding officer on the ground today, what would be the challenge? Can we unmute General
Uh,
Kulkarni? Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Uh, Yeah. Now, of course, it's very, very challenging. There's no denying the fact. The fact is, but again, the people there understand very well because the company operating post, most of the army is deployed in the company operating post. You see the internally displaced persons, how they were helped out medically, logistically, ensuring the road opening to be done, ensuring that everybody is safe. There should be no collateral damage to occur. To build and to ensure the trust of all the communities, all of it. The army has a huge role to play, and therefore the commanding officer at this point of time, he alone has the faith and respect and the trust of the people around him, the villagers. You'll find anything and everything in Manipur today operating through. And therefore, there is also a need. They now not just that they're operating, they have to tie up with the civil administration because Article 355 is there, not Article 356. So they are working through the civil administration. They're working through the local police over there. They're ensuring that the road opening is there. Logistically, the curfew at most of the times it gets lifted at say 5 in the morning till almost 6 in the evening. There's no curfew. So to see to that there are no riots that take place, no firing takes place, all these kind of things. It's very, very challenging, very, very difficult task to stay neutral at all times, to ensure and to be able to tell the communities, come on, feel good, feel free, because they were all staying together. Now, if this kind of a brotherly feeling that existed till yesterday, and if that brotherly feeling has disappeared today, it will come back tomorrow. There is no denying the fact. They all understand they have to stay together. But the trust that now has been lost between the communities, only the army, it's only the Assam Rifles that is ensuring at all times of anything and everybody. And until and unless this kind of operations by the armies, which look and are always neutral, without saying, there is no denying the fact, non-partisan, logistically sustaining these people, medical humanitarian support, internally displaced persons who are still close to the army camp, being ensured that they're being taken care of. It's a huge challenge. Yes, the commanding officers are facing it, straight off without any problem. And then, more important is to ensure who's operating. The commanding officer is not everywhere. The company commander need not be everywhere. So the troops on ground, those JCOs
Yeah.
and men who have to understand and who are really working within the constraint, and that is why you find the hearing how many deaths have taken place. Only about 160 or so, or 400 injured. They were saying that 60 or 1,000 people got displaced. Most of the displaced people are now slowly returning. The normalcy is being seen. All this is
Yeah.
only possible because of the army and the Assam Rifles operating there. Yeah.
Absolutely. But let me give the last word to you, General Hooda. Again, I take you back to Kashmir because I remember being there in 2016. It was a very similar situation. Politics had collapsed. The politicians were not taking the lead in bringing people together. I remember you actually conducting a kind of mini press conference at that time and saying, and I'll never forget this, you said, we are ready to sit at the table. You actually made an open appeal as a commander saying, come to the table, we'll talk to you. And it's not an identical situation, of course, it's different history, different context. But today, again, it's the army that's not just at the border with Myanmar, it's the army that's taking on all of these communities who are weaponized today. This is a weaponized internal conflict, but they're our own people. They're not necessarily against the state. It's the army that's having to sort of release militants, even in instances, to keep the larger peace. My question to you is, if this strife continues, and I hope it doesn't, but imagine that it does, do you think the army would then need the cover of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act? Would it need to go to the Supreme Court and say, give us a temporary cover of the AFSPA? Because we can't operate if every time we step out, we need a magistrate sort of to accompany us. What do you see as the challenges for the army if the strife continues?
So, Barkha, challenges are, as you said, how long can you operate? So it's not as if the AFSPA does not exist anywhere in Manipur. So, but there are areas where, particularly in the Imphal town, where the AFSPA has been lifted, and so if you have to operate there, it's
Yeah.
going to be a constant challenge. Look, it's always there at the back of a commanding officer's mind that if I go and operate on my own, and if something happens, I mean, who will provide me legal cover? I don't have any legal cover. I'm not supposed to be there. At the same time, he's seeing, a situation that is emerging, and these flashpoints come up immediately. And if he doesn't act, then that also weighs on his mind that there is something happening, but I'm not able to act. So I think as time goes by, and if the situation doesn't improve, and as you said, I hope it does, the army will have to look at this. And then also, but where are these soldiers coming from? After all, these soldiers are coming from certain operational roles and training that they're supposed to do. We have an ongoing situation at the line of actual control. You're aware, which has led to enhanced deployment of Indian Army soldiers. Now you have a situation here where you have 160 columns that are operating. So I think it's important that we are able to at least bring calm to the situation in Manipur. And Barkha, the army has operated in these areas. Army understands what we call the human terrain very well, which is why it understands that there is a need to do an outreach to the local communities, try and get them at least on some ways to negotiate or find some middle ground so that violence dampens down. The problem is the fundamental problems and the issues, differences are not going to go away so soon. But I think the idea is to quickly control at least the violence in the state. And my last point, Barkha, is, for all those social media warriors, who are sitting and saying, why did the army release these KYKL militants? The army should operate like this. The army should operate like that. To them, I will only say, look, these are professional, well-trained soldiers who understand the situation on ground. Please don't complicate things, by unnecessarily trying to rake up issues like this on social media. That's my last point, Barkha.
We leave it there. I just smiled because I wanted to say they're keyboard warriors who shouldn't actually be lecturing to real life warriors, and that is of course the entire difference. And I just want to underline that it isn't the first time that I have seen the army step in when literally trust in all other institutions collapses, and that's what we're seeing in Manipur. In fact, General Konsam Himalaya Singh had a very interesting phrase. He said the administration is also split, right? So actually the only non-partisan institution left is, not for the first time, the Indian Army. So salutes to those of our men who are on the ground. Thank you, General Hooda. Thank you, General Kulkarni. Difficult time. We can only hope that the situation improves. But in the meantime, please do not take to social media to lecture the army on what it should be doing. Let trained professionals do their job. They're doing their job in extremely difficult and, circumstances, and really holding a fragile piece together. Thank you very much, generals, and thank you to our audience. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you, Barkha. Thank you very much.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.